Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where it is assumed that everyone is a racist and it's not a big deal. If you're a little bit confused and you didn't listen to episode 8, then if you listen to episode 8, which is my deconstruction of race, then it will make a lot more sense. But it is Race Monday, and that means we cover a race-related topic. So this is episode 71. Someone once misraced me, but I survived. Obviously, of course, I'm doing a little spin-off of misgendering people. But anyway, my family has a tradition started by my father where we take a trip where the whole family takes a trip to visit the Longwood Gardens, which is just outside Philadelphia. It's the old DuPont summer home. When my father first came to America, someone took him there. He loved it. And so he made sure that we knew that it existed and made me promise that even after he left this earth, that I would continue to take the family, everyone, my brother's family as well, down to that place and, just spend the day there looking at all of the beautiful flowers, etc. So anyway, back in the day when I just had two kids, when two of my kids were young, we were getting ready to leave. It was the end of the day. We were getting ready to leave, and everyone's taking turns going to the bathroom. And so I'm sitting out there with two of my kids, and they're being a little rambunctious, and they're jumping up and down on this bench. Where there's this older white guy sitting on the bench. And so I told them to settle down so as to not bother this person. And so he came up to me and, he said that he basically said, "I want to congratulate you. I think you're doing a great job teaching your kids English because so many people come to this country and they don't bother learning the language." Now, I would tell that story in my race class, and people were shocked. They were appalled. And I think it's because most people are taught that you're not supposed to say that. In fact, if someone said it to one of them, they would have given that person a piece of their mind, as it were. So I would, after they, get over their initial reaction, I said, "Well, okay, what do you think I said to this person?" And, a couple students, they would kind of like, okay, so what did you say? Because clearly you didn't fly off the handle and start raging on this guy. So what did you say? And I said, "Thank you very much. I try to do my best." And that was it. He walked away smiling and I walked away smiling as well. And then I told my wife about that story on the way home, and we had a great laugh about it in the car. And so people were kind of even more confused now. They were like, "Hey, why would you say that? I mean, why didn't you give that person a piece of your mind?" And I said, "Well, think about it, right? I don't know who this guy is. I only have 15 seconds to talk to this person. I'm not going to ruin his day. I mean, he was obviously trying to be a nice guy and compliment me on my parenting skills, right? So I'm not going to ruin his day. I'm not going to ruin my day by getting all angry." And then even after the conversation with him, even after I yelled and spit in his face, on the way home, I yell at my kids and I yell at my wife, and just have a miserable rest of the day. No, I'm not going to have that. And so, understanding and taking that statement in the way that he meant it, that he wanted to compliment me, then hey, he has a good day. I have a good day, and it's good. All things are good. Now, some people might still be sitting there saying, but he misracialized you, right? He misunderstood your race, and then he told you that he misracialized you. That should upset you. Look, everyone misracializes other people all of the time. It happens all the time, right? Because we're always acting on our impressions. right, on the generalized racializations that most people have come to understand and accept as being true. And so you can't really fight that. You can't really, you know, blame people for their education and the time period when they grew up. I mean, that's going to be such a tiresome, exhausting way to live. Look, I'll give you another example. My wife, when we started dating, she told me that, excuse me, prior to me asking her out, uh, like a year or two ago, she saw me. And the only thing that went through her mind when she saw me was dumb jock. That's all she thought. And thought it was pretty funny. And because I was younger and some people might have mistaken me for a dumb jock. Let's just say I got upset that she misraced me, right? That she misracialized me. Well, we never would have gotten married. And you know, that wouldn't have been good. But my wife and subsequent conversations, my wife did say basically that's how a lot of people see me, and that's why they treat me in the way that they do. And so I thought about it, and there's nothing you can do about the way people see you, right? You can't change the world that way. So I decided to use it for my advantage. In other words, I embraced the reality that people saw me as a dumb jock, right? So, okay, it is what it is. So I'll just use it for my advantage. In other words, when people see someone else as a dumb jock, what they will do, generally speaking, is they will underestimate you. And so given the way that I lecture, the way that I teach, it goes against the trendy things that a lot of people want professors to say. And so I would get into a lot of trouble frequently. And so one day I was called into the principal's office, so to speak, right? The program chair's, program head's office. And, I thought it would just be, a casual conversation. It turned into an hour and a half of screaming, literally screaming, yelling. This guy was yelling at me for an hour and a half, and every other word was an F-bomb, which, if you think about it, I could have said, hey, hostile work environment, but I didn't want to ruin this guy's career. So I just sat there and I listened to him, kept checking my watch, and was like, okay, here we go. When's he going to take a breath? And finally, after an hour and a half, I guess he got so tired yelling at me, he finally stopped. And so it gave me an opportunity to start responding to the 100 or so questions that he threw in my face. And it was after the second sentence that I spoke that his whole demeanor changed, that he realized he made a horrible mistake. He totally underestimated me, and now he's in deep caca, right? And he started getting worried. And so I wrapped up pretty quickly and I shook his hand and I said, you'll note that I did not respond in kind. And he thanked me, he apologized again, and that was it. It's not an isolated incident. There were a lot of other people who did the same thing, right? They totally judged me by my appearance, underestimated me, and proceeded to treat me in a certain way. And I could have gotten upset, but I'm not going to change how people see me, right? No matter how much I rage against the machine, it's not going to, so all the people who have not seen my rage are still going to see me as a dumb jock. I mean, there's nothing I can do to change that. And believe me, I've tried to lose weight, but my method of losing weight just doesn't seem to, and I'm not going to sacrifice eating food either. Anyway, so there it is, right? People are going to continue to see me in the way that they do. There's nothing I can do about that. And so rather than getting upset, rather than getting angry, futilely, right? I mean, it's a futile reaction because I'm still going to get a lot of people to see me that way. Now, not raging, right? Not flying off the handle means that you don't get as many reacts on social media, like on Twitter, as a lot of other people. So you don't get the interaction, right, that the algorithms see as a sign of, sort of promoting you, but you have a happier life, right? Being angry and being upset and going out of your way to deliberately be misunderstood, to elicit the wrong response so you can be angry again, that's very tiring. And I did that once. I would tell my students that I am the prototypical angry Asian guy, but it's too tiring, right? And no one can sustain that for any period of time. And I got wise to that pretty early, and I decided that I wasn't going to rage every day of my life. And so I started thinking of alternate ways to respond. And that's pretty much what I came up with, right? Try to understand the motivation, the intent behind the words, and then go from there, right? But our society today is all about the rage. In the Ron Paul conference that I went to over the weekend, one of the speakers talked about it being the age of rage. I'll talk more about that conference in tomorrow's episode. Just general statements, nothing too specific. But rage is what gets response. Rage is what gets action these days. Rage gets you likes and reacts and interaction on social media. Rage gets people's attention. But rage is an emotion. And as we discussed earlier in a previous episode, emotion, raw emotion, has no knowledge. It's just total 100% feeling, and you're just acting on your feelings, whatever that might be. On the opposite extreme of this binary, setup is knowledge. And knowledge in its pure state is non-emotional, right? It's just matter of fact. And so you have on one extreme just emotion with no knowledge, and on the other extreme knowledge with very little emotion. So you can think clearly, right, without bias. But with emotion, right, there is no consideration of consequences, right? So in anger, you do something that you will later regret. I mean, you could have stopped yourself if you thought about it and realized what the possible downside risk might have been, but you weren't thinking. You were just acting on your emotion. So acting only on your emotion, particularly, and it's not just rage, but some people, it's love, right? You're so blinded by what you think is love, that emotion of, good vibes, let's just say. I'll go into love probably in one day in the future. But even that, there's no consideration that the feelings are accurate, that what you're feeling is giving you good information. And obviously, you're not even thinking about emotion. You're not thinking about information. You're thinking about only the feels, right? So whether it's rage or it's love, lust, or whatever you want to say, there are always consequences. Now, some people have so trained themselves to always think and spin things in the negative so that you'll always be angry, right? So some people will deliberately misunderstand what other people are saying so that you can have something to rage about, so that you have something with which you can post on social media and become super dramatic, right? Sort of do your virtue signaling in reverse, because you're calling out other people's sort of non-virtue, unvirtuous behavior. So you want to highlight your virtue while at the same time, drawing attention to the unvirtuous behavior of others. So that negative spin that people try to have, I think, is perfect for X, that's Twitter, right? And so oftentimes I feel like people are deliberately spinning things in a certain way to get certain kinds of reaction. I mean, that's kind of what X wants, right? That's what Twitter wants. They want social interaction with other people, even if it is contrived, even if it is fake. That's what's being encouraged on that platform. And so because of that, everything has become so superficial. There's no real deep thinking any longer. Because if you do take a moment and you think about what you just read, then you might post something different, or you might realize that you could take it a different way. And so there's no outrage at all. And so there are always consequences. Rage usually does not consider consequence. You just act first and then think later. And many times you are filled with regret. Now, to wrap this up, though, we began with misracing, right? So you misracialize someone. You think they're one kind of person, but really they're a little bit more complicated than that. So on a positive note, misracing someone is information, right? It could be a sign of the vibe that you are giving off to other people. And if it's a vibe that you want other people to have, then fine, you don't have to do anything. But if it's a vibe that you don't want other people to have, particularly as a professor or as a pastor, you don't want them to see you a certain way, then you got to make an adjustment, right? And so people misracing you is information for you, right? It tells you about what that person is seeing, where they might be, the state of their knowledge and their subjectivity, especially when it comes to perceiving you. So it informs you how to respond to that person. It also informs you on how maybe you should take another look at how you are conducting yourself, how you are carrying yourself, the way you speak, the way you act, your mannerisms, all of this stuff. Because a lot of the sort of unconscious thinking that we have, it shows up in our body. It shows up in our body language. It shows up in our face, our facial expressions. And so when people misracialize you, whether they misracialize your emotion, are you angry or are you happy? If they're misracializing your mental acuity, right? Oh, you're a dumb jock or you are a geek, that's information for you. And keep in mind that all of the racializations that can be put on us, positive, negative, how other people see us, the things that we like, we don't like, all of that collectively become part of our identity. And so how other people perceive us does in fact influence. It exerts an influence, some sort of influence on us. It changes the way that we react. Maybe we make an adjustment with the clothing that we buy to wear. Maybe it causes us to change, I don't know, how we fold our clothes, who knows? But all of that information is there to inform you how other people see you. So you can either ignore it or make an adjustment and, respond, right? So it's just important too, because we have to remember that aggression is always aggression and defense is always defense. So if you are an aggressor, there is a high level of potential where you will cause harm. But if you're always on the defense, right, and this is talking in terms of, verbal interaction with others, then you always are ready to defend yourself. You're always considering what other people are saying. You're trying to get to the heart of the intent of the words that are being expressed to you. And so you are defending yourself intellectually and physically. If you are aggressing against others with no justification, there is a lot of potential for getting into a lot of trouble. And that's something you don't want, right? So we want, and again, going back to what the whole theme of this podcast is about, finding solutions, finding alternatives, right? beyond the choices that are immediately obvious to us, and taking that moment to consider, why would that person say that to me in this moment? Why is that person treating me like this? Why is that person looking at me like this? All of these considerations is just information for us to be able to have a happier life, right? To be able to be more happy with ourselves, be knowledgeable about ourselves, also how other people see us, and right, we can navigate things a little bit better. That's it for this episode. I will talk to you in the next.